So I'm Jan, I'm the Learning and Evaluation Coordinator at Birmingham Changing Futures Together. With myself, Christine and Earl, we're going to be talking about the Lead Worker Peer Mentor Service. We'll be focusing more primarily on, I suppose, on the peer mentor side of things, but both sides of that role are crucial. It was a service that employed peer mentors with lived experience of multiple disadvantage to support clients facing multiple issues, as Colette spoke about brilliantly earlier. It was a paid role, the peer mentor, something that we really thought, we really wanted to value that role of lived experience. So I'll go through the impact of the evaluation. Christine will talk a bit about the recruitment and retention, and then Earl will go through some of his experiences working on the programme and bringing his lived experience to the role. So just very briefly, a bit about the Lead Worker Peer Mentor Programme. As I sort of put in the chat, there's a lot of this stuff is on our website, so I'll not go into huge detail. But the Lead Worker Peer Mentor Service had a caseload of clients, and they're all primarily consisting of coordinating like a bespoke, holistic, wraparound support package, ensuring that all of that client's needs and all the many different service providers they went to all worked in unison holistically for that client. And then the peer mentor, as well as that, brought like sort of, I suppose, positive relationships, engaging the clients, keeping them engaged, regularly speaking to clients and coming at them, I suppose, from a place of shared experience. So evaluating, obviously, we wanted to evaluate the impact of the Lead Worker Peer Mentor Service. So basically, we just gathered a whole load of information. So we gathered 18 different areas of information. So service use, such as attendance A&E, evictions from tenancy, days in rehab, like that sort of stuff, accommodation status. And we did that for the 12 months prior to them engaging on the service. And then we continued to collect that data every 3 months. We also did wellbeing assessments, such as the NDT assessment, New Direction Team, and the Outcome Star assessment to look at mental health, wellbeing, and so on. So we were constantly trying to evaluate the impact. And then we tried to sort of break it down into two different models. So we had Model A clients with only a lead worker and Model B clients with a lead worker and a peer mentor with lived experience. So we kept reviewing that data, and then we were able to compare the two models. So on this slide, it shows the overall results for the first couple of years, 2015 to 17. So this is across the whole programme, not broken down. So what we found is, as you can see there, 38% reduction in hospital inpatient episodes, 70-odd% reduction in A&E visits, 80-odd in reduction in criminal convictions, and a 300% increase in community mental health team interactions, which is something we were trying to promote. So those are just a few, I guess, of the examples. So those results immediately just sort of gave us that confidence that wraparound holistic approach to making sure the clients were getting the support they needed from all the different areas was working really well. So then we broke those results that you see there down into Model A versus Model B. And that's what this slide shows, basically, is that across the board, those clients that had access to a peer mentor had better results than those that didn't, basically. So you'll see here on the slide, you've got like A&E visits. Those clients with a peer mentor, that group, their visits went down by 2.7 times more than those with only a lead worker. The hospital admissions down by twice as many, convictions down by 17 times as many as those with only a lead worker, and engagement with CMH community mental health teams up by 3.5 times more. On top of that, linked to that, we also found that those clients with a peer mentor also engaged on the programme for longer, and their well-being improved by more. So the numbers to us looked really conclusive, but obviously we wanted to speak to clients, the staff, the support services, because we can totally appreciate that Model B, you actually have 2 members of staff working with them, irrelevant, and Model A, 1 member of staff. So in theory, you would expect part of that just to be the fact that Model B had 2 members of staff. The only thing I would say with that is that even when peer mentors worked on their own without a lead worker, we still saw those numbers being, the trends in the numbers being the same. So yeah, there's some sort of there was some investigation to be done within those numbers. So that's what we went out to do by speaking to the clients and did some further evaluation. So just, I guess, a few key quotes that we just got from, we've got, again, on our reports, we've got loads of case studies and testimonies and quotes and stuff. But again, the first quote here, just sort of the client talking about feeling like the enemy, wanting to speak to their peer mentor. The second person, you know, I couldn't believe she'd lived like me. These are the sorts of things that we were hearing that the clients were telling us were inspirational, the reason for their improved well-being. And the third one there, that sort of aspirational aspect about I want to be like him. So these were the sorts of things that we were hearing from our clients and from the support services. So after we looked at that, we took the decision to give every client basically access to a peer mentor, because the numbers, the feedback across the board was really so good. So a couple of the bits, I guess the key learning. We were told that if it wasn't for the peer mentors' lived experience and their ability to really openly and clearly discuss that experience, the clients wouldn't have engaged in the first place and would have left earlier. You know, client telling us they didn't like services, they didn't trust services, they'd been let down by services, you know, had no inclination of going back to services, and they needed somebody that was able to explicitly divulge their lived experience and journeys before the client themselves that could make it. So there's a lot of skill within, you know, simply having the lived experience, you know, is one level, but being able to explicitly communicate and express that with the client was coming across as absolutely fundamental. And we're also told that the peer mentors were absolutely brilliant at challenging the norms and challenging services, and that was from services themselves, you know, who were telling us that they were sort of tweaking and flexing their service on the feedback from the peer mentors, you know. So we have numerous examples of hostels changing their approach to people that had an arson conviction and so on, having spoken to peer mentors who had been through similar things. Also, of the 320 odd clients that we had, nearly 50 of them disengaged and then re-engaged with us again. And again, the feedback when we spoke to those clients specifically, it was the peer mentors' experience of having done so themselves that was key. That sort of non-judgmental language, really focusing on the positive stuff about how well they were doing prior to disengaging, how well they were doing when they were engaging, as opposed to focusing so much on the disengagement. But with all of this, I would just say, you know, and again, a lot more of this is in our reports, the work of the lead workers really holistically bringing those support services together, making sure that they weren't working in isolation. Trying to break down those silo approaches, absolutely 100% key to this. This was a program and a partnership. So a little bit, I guess, about the money side of things. So over those 300 clients, we made savings of over £3 million. Again, full details of this are in our we had an independent review done by the New Economics Foundation, and that report's on our website for you to have a go and look into that, which gives you all of the sort of how those figures were come to. But again, engagement and relationships, again, being absolutely key to this from what we were told by New Economic Foundation. So as can be seen here, you've got the cost benefits basically increased as time went on and the client became more engaged with the programme. So after 1 year, for every pound spent, you're basically making £1.78 worth of cost savings, cost benefits, all the way up to 2 years, where you make £2.51 of cost benefits for every pound spent after those 2 years. So again, just really wanted to sort of stress that sort of the engagement and keeping clients engaged was absolutely key to this. And finally, from me, before I pass over to Christine, again on the numbers, you know, obviously we did see a lot of services, you know, a lot of increasing costs where the clients were actually engaging in treatments that they weren't doing prior to engaging with the lead worker peer mentor service, which was, you know, for us a real positive. And those increases in costs were very much outweighed by the savings that were made in more sort of crisis support, as can be seen there, the 215 compared to the 949 savings. So again, very briefly, just trying to just show there that, you know, we found it a really impactful program, really impactful service. There's a lot more stuff of this on our website, but yeah, I'll pass you over to Christine now to go through some of the sort of the more recruitment and retention and some of the practicalities and stuff like that. Christine.
Thank you, Jan, and hello everyone. So I'm Christine. I was formerly a lead worker on the Lead Worker Peer Mentor service, and then I went on to become team leader in the Lead Worker Peer Mentor continuation strategy. A very long name for that service there, so I'm really impressed I got that out all in one go. Currently, I work for the Children's Society as National Systems Change Manager. And I just want to say that without being part of Birmingham Changing Futures Together and all that skills and all that knowledge that I gained from that programme, I never would have had the confidence to go for the role or could even imagine doing a similar role. So that's my thank you to Changing Futures Together. And also my final soppy moment, you'll be pleased to hear. So I've been asked to speak to you today about the recruitment of peer mentors and staff with lived experience. And I'm very much coming from the perspective of someone who's worked alongside the peer mentors as a colleague and someone who's also line managed staff members with lived experience. And I'm going to speak to you today a bit more about the lessons we learned throughout the Lead Worker Peer Mentor service in terms of recruitment. And I would definitely never say at this point that it's a final model. It's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing, and I think it needs to as well, depending on the needs of the organisation and the client group as well. So first lesson we learn is about tailoring the job description. So we had a very generic job description for support workers, but it was not fit for purpose for staff with lived experience. So we really had to change that up and the person specification and make it explicitly clear that the only experience we were asking for was lived experience of multiple disadvantage. That was it. That was the qualification. That was the work experience. We didn't want anything else. And from that, we reinforced that message in our application process. So we had 3 key questions we asked in the application. That was firstly, what is your lived experience? Secondly, what has been your journey to recovery and stability? And thirdly, how would you use that knowledge in your role as peer mentor? And we also had to look at, once we'd finalised the job description, where we advertised as well. So as many organisations, large organisations, you have particular places where you advertise. That tends to be newspapers or online job forums. But we wanted to reach a wider community. We wanted to find those hidden future peer mentors that might not think to look at Indeed.com or charity jobs. So once the advert was complete, we sent that out to a wide selection of organisations. That could be housing associations, that could be substance misuse services, voluntary services, expert by experience groups, you name it. If it was going to reach those future peer mentors, we were sending it out. But that wasn't where it stopped, really. So there was still recognition there were barriers to recruitment. So pre-COVID, mainly pre-COVID, we included in the advert an opportunity for a bit of an open day or drop-in session. So anyone who was interested in the role but wanted to know a little bit more could drop in, they could meet the team, they could ask any questions they had. What does that day-to-day look like for a peer mentor? But there was also the opportunity to access computers as well. So unfortunately, digital exclusion is alive and well, and we didn't want that to be a barrier to people completing applications. So alongside access to computers, we also made sure someone was there to support the applicants in the process and offer a bit of guidance about what they could include. And that was really important, because what we were asking applicants to include is all their lived experience, warts and all, contact with the criminal justice system, so on and so forth. And that really flies in the face of what you would expect from recruitment and is more than likely the last thing people would think to put in their application. But so by having that support, it really increased the quality of the applications we received. So a little bit about the interview process. That also changed quite a lot and was tailored to the needs. So it was twofold. and we call it the formal interview process than the informal interview process. So the formal was probably what we're most familiar with. So there was a manager, there was a lead worker, there was a peer mentor on a panel, and they asked some of the standard recruitment questions that you have to ask, but try to make them more scenario based. But the key element of our interview process was the informal panel, which was purely made up of individuals with lived experience. So that could be experts by experience, that could be peer mentors. We have volunteers, we had ex-clients sometimes on that panel, and that was more of a relaxed space. So the applicant could really open up about their lived experience, and the panel would also share their lived experience as well. So it was a real open, honest dialogue about expectations of the role, where they were in their journey. And it was often the deciding factor was the scores from the informal panel as to whether we were going to hire someone as opposed to the scores from the formal panel. So both were important. And then once someone was successful, got through that whole journey, we wanted to make the transition into paid employment as smooth as possible. So we had pre-starter assessments, and that was our final opportunity to look at any barriers we hadn't foreseen into employment. Things like transition from benefits into a salary and so on and so forth. And some of the support we could offer there involved wage advances, prepaid bus passes, travel loans, support with accommodation and tenancy deposit schemes. So it just tried to make that process as smooth as possible. And next slide, please, Jan. So I'm going to try and go through this as quick as possible because I don't want to overrun. I know we have a little bit this morning, but what's on the screen is kind of the key principles of our employment approach for peer mentors. But I would also suggest they're really good principles for any employment of any member of staff. So what was important to us was the flexible working principle. So when peer mentors started right from the outset, we would say to them, we don't want this to be a job for life for you. We think that within 2 years, we would really like to see you grow, flourish, be promoted, whether that's internally or externally, and not to be pigeonholed very much into a lived experience type role or a peer mentor role. So to encourage that personal and professional development, we really had to have flexible working practices. So each peer mentor had 5 hours a week alongside the Every Step of the Way programme, which they could use in whatever way they want for their personal or professional development. So that could be CV writing, it could be interview techniques, it could be training, qualifications, whatever they wanted to use that for, essentially. And that really fitted into our person-centred and strengths-based employment practice. So I think when you hire a peer mentor, you are hiring a whole person. You're not hiring just someone's professional experience, and you have to value that and you have to support that within the role. So we were trying to really move away from that risk averse approach of concentrating on the what ifs and is this a risky thing, to move towards more the unique skills that peer mentors brought that couldn't be taught. You couldn't train those skills, and what their goals and aspirations were. And ideally, if they went on to another role and they were promoted, that met our aim of having lived experience at every level of the system, not just in the support field. Final couple of points. Although the peer mentors worked alongside the lead worker and the lead worker initially led on the cases, we would gradually encourage peer mentors at a pace that worked for them to start managing cases for that experience. And that practice was reinforced by reflective practice sessions, which are going to be discussed a bit more later under the PI approach. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I really want to emphasise the importance of peer-to-peer support and peer-to-peer reflective practice. So there was some challenges that only a peer mentor could understand that they were experiencing and would be able to speak with another peer mentor about. So we really wanted to encourage that space, but also informal reflective practice across the whole team and the whole service. So I know as a lead worker, I really benefited from that opportunity to speak with peer mentors to get that new perspective. And I think that was key to my development, and I wouldn't have the opportunity in any other role of doing that. So I am going to hand over to Earl. Lastly, a bit of a plug for our Lead Worker Peer Mentor Toolkit. So Jan, I think you've already put the link in the chat, but any other questions you have about recruiting peer mentors, what needs to be in the advert, what kind of interview questions you would ask, that is all there. I'm going to hand over to Earl, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, good morning all. Thank you, Christine, Jan. Yeah, can you hear me okay? Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just actually listening to what's been presented already, and even so much as a comment that Kevin's just put into the chat box, I'm thinking, well, they've covered what I wanted to say. But just listening to what you was just touching upon there, Christine, I can actually forget how much support there was as a peer mentor at Shelter. And I suppose it almost like take it for granted. But okay, so a little bit about myself. How I came to be involved with the Changing Futures project was my history is substance misuse, homelessness, criminal justice system, care system. Spending most of my adult life in and out of custody and on substances and tied to services of one form or another if I did engage. And yeah, in and out of hostels and all the stuff that no doubt we're all familiar with that goes with that lifestyle. And very much like Colette was talking about earlier, me and Colette actually met each other in Parkhouse. I'd done my detox in Parkhouse, I don't know, I think maybe 3 or 6 months before Colette. And my first opportunity of giving back was going through a peer mentor program at Parkhouse. And I believe I was a peer mentor at Parkhouse when Colette came in. And we've been in each other's lives since, thank God. And that was the basis, really. And I met other people there who were doing something different with their lives and engaging in services where their lived experience was helping others. And prior to Changing Futures, it was we used to have a wonderful recovery building in Birmingham called Summer Hill, which was like the hub of the recovery community in Birmingham city centre. And I forget what they used to call themselves now, but there were people that had lived very similar lives but were doing something different and were trying to help. And it was there that I first got introduced to what was happening in relation to Changing Futures and lived experience, putting in, being part of the bid to bring some money into Birmingham and get it up and off the ground and what have you. And as Colette touched upon, I can remember going to some meetings. They used to have these meetings in just by the courts in town, Ruskin Chambers, and we used to go there, and we'd all be sitting around the table discussing things. And again, pretty much like what Colette said, I don't think I had a clue what was happening. I was just turning up. And trying to be involved. And then as these meetings progressed, then I started getting an understanding of what they were trying to do, and that the lived experience was a vital part of actually what they were trying to do. And I think it may have been the first time in my life where people really did want my views on things that were going to have an impact on what is going to happen moving forward. So in a nutshell, the Changing Futures got off the ground, and the first, apart from being involved in the bidding part of it and writing whatever it was they were writing, then the Experts by Experience, that was my first real foray into this. And I'm just thinking, what did I learn from the Experts by Experience? And I haven't got enough time to tell you all that I learned. But one thing that really stands out was they allowed me to be, and they allowed me to basically learn how to talk and how to conduct myself appropriately, because I'd come from 20, 30 years of living on the streets and in prisons and what have you. And the way that I articulated myself in those environments weren't conducive to working within the professional environment, but also not losing that, because I knew that that was an integral part of what we were doing to be able to engage with the next Earl that came along, being able to speak to them in my language, their language. And but I know I learned so much through the experts by experience. And for some reason, when the first jobs for peer mentor came up, I was really fearful of going for one, and I never went for one. But I see my peers who were experts by experience with me now going into paid employment, and that became attractive to me. I see Colette's put a screen on now, because I can remember Colette going into employment and Colette always encouraging me to actually go for it, Earl, go for it, Earl. You'll be okay. And I did bite the bullet in the end, and actually I went for a job. And I can remember going through that interview process really, really fearful. What have I got to offer? Who's going to employ me? But then the realization that no, my life experiences have become my CV. And thankfully that what we got here, the Changing Futures project, we're really buying into that. And that was really the whole ethos of employing people like myself, that your life experience, but more importantly that I changed and I was trying to do something different with my life, because my life experiences per se, they're wonderful, but if I'm still living that life, it's no good being in this, because we want to try and support people to actually initiate some change in their lives, and with the hope that it's possible. And so once I got the job, again, what did I learn? Because I tried to take some notes, and I'm no good at taking notes because I just go off on a tangent anyway. And again, I haven't got enough time here to tell you all what I learned whilst I was actually employed as a peer mentor. One of the big things that sticks in my mind was, because we talk about system change, and one of the things was actually why are we called peer mentors? And when we're paid, because the common consensus of a peer mentor prior to me being involved in Changing Futures was you're a volunteer, and you volunteer for whatever service it may be. And I can remember one of our wonderful managers at the time, Emma, saying, actually, because we had this focus group of, shall we call it, of, well, what should we call it then, and all this. And I remember Emma coming along and saying, we really want to keep the title peer mentor because we want to change how people view peer mentors. And we want people to see that peer mentors are more than just the volunteer that will be pulled out whenever they're needed for something, and they are employable and employed with their lived experiences, helping others and helping initiate system change in services. And I thank God for that, that she was able to make me understand, no, I get you, and it makes sense. So other opportunities, going around the country and seeing the different parts of the Fulfilling Lives projects around the countries, and seeing what they're doing and trying to take best practice from other areas in the country. Can we be learning from them? Can we do things differently? And so benefits of the role, again, I haven't got enough time. I am where I am today as a direct result of me being involved in Changing Futures, and obviously changing my life for the better, going into detox, being willing to volunteer, getting involved in things and what have you, and then having my first opportunity of employment within the Changing Futures project. And I now work for the NHS, Birmingham Solihull Mental Health Trust, for the liaison and diversion service in the prison pathway. And in a nutshell, it's basically, this might not be the right thing to say, but I do see it as very similar in the sense of a lead worker peer mentor, but now my job role is a support time and recovery worker, and I work with practitioners, the equivalent of the lead worker, who come with their own expertise and what have you, and the learning that I'm continuously getting. I just really love it. I love being part of it. And the role that I'm actually employed to do, lived experience helped create this role. And that was a direct result of these lived experience individuals starting out at Shelter and the Changing Futures project. So training and development, it's just ongoing. When I first came into Shelter, just using a computer scared the life out of me. I did not know how to do it. Colette will laugh. I used to ask Colette to do lots of things for me. I had a wonderful lead worker. I can't get off this without mentioning Nina Smith, who just educated and taught me so much, because my lived experience was wonderful, and definitely helped with the individuals we got to work with and that. But she taught me how to engage with services and what safeguarding was all about and how we go through that process, how we advocate and challenge on behalf of others. And yeah, and I'm still in touch with Nina today. We've become good friends and what have you, and she's moved on to probation and what have you now. And we still tap into each other's expertise and seek help and guidance on whatever it may be, a direct result of being employed by Changing Futures. I'm just being mindful of the time. You need to shut me down if I'm carrying on too much, Jan. Jan, sorry. So my employment timeline, volunteering for Changing Futures, becoming employed by Changing Futures, and then I can remember again, I have to shout out to all the management there, Amy, Emma, Beth, all of them really brought into having us there, having us as lived experience employed in the office and wherever, and allowing us to make mistakes and learn, and for me anyway, guiding me in a way that it just worked for me. It worked for me. And I can remember Emma, actually, I was with them employed for like 16 months, and Emma seen a role outside of Changing Futures that she thought I might be suitable for. I can remember showing it to me and me just thinking, why would they want me? They wouldn't want to pay me that money. I ain't got those qualifications. And then she broke it down for me. You've done this, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this. And in a nutshell, I went for that job and got it. And that was working with a project that the European Council were funding, working with teenagers outreach, not in education, employment and training. And it was a wonderful opportunity, but I didn't enjoy it. But what I'd learned is to actually value myself and know that I don't need to stop here just for a wage pack, and I can actually then look elsewhere. And then from there, I got employed by CGL as a recovery motivator, and I really enjoyed my time at CGL. And then when the opportunity came up of a job within liaison and diversion, I went for that, and thank God I got that. And I've been here now for a couple of years, and I love it. So our lived experience is now in the prisons, where the prison estate really value having the lived experience in there. I could talk forever about what the Changing Futures project has done for me, and being a part of it from the get-go and seeing it evolve. It's very sad, the realisation that, no, it's come to an end now. It's come to an end now. And we did know at the start this was a finite amount of money that was going to last X amount of years and what have you. But it is actually sad to think, no, it's over. I'll finish on this about some of the system change. Now, I didn't even really acknowledge it. And again, it was the management that actually allowed me to understand that, no, myself and others within the Changing Futures, we were part of system change. We were part of systems actually doing something different as a direct response of us advocating on behalf of our service users and our own experiences of using services and what have you. And CGL springs to mind in relation to what they've got now, a homeless outreach team. And it was us being able to advocate on behalf of our service users that, for whatever reason, were falling off script and what have you, and they were street homeless and not being able to manage to keep appointments and what have you, that we was able to actually bring this to meetings at CGL, and they took it on board. And I'd like to think that we played a small part in the fact that there is now a homeless outreach team within CGL that go to try and catch those people that would have either been not engaging or what have you, and then being able to, this one, I will finish now, but this one is in my mind, that I think we was working with one lad, and bless him, he kept finding himself in and out of section, in and out of hospital. Substance misuse was his issue, that was blatantly obvious to me. And although he had underlying mental health issues as well, and when he's picked up the substances, he wouldn't take his medication, so he found himself in that revolving door of hospital instead of prison. We was allowed, we was, myself and Nina, we used to go and sit on the ward rounds, and I can remember asking our management, am I allowed to speak in them? Am I allowed to speak? Can I ask them what are they actually doing? And but then basically encouraging me, yes. And I can remember speaking to the lad and saying, can I ask these questions on your behalf? Yeah. And really, I just wanted to know, what are you actually doing for him? And they've gone, oh, we're addressing substance misuse. I've gone, in what way? And they've gone, well, we're telling him what drugs are. I've gone, well, he could tell you that. But what are you actually doing? And from that, it was quite sad, really. They weren't even really aware that there was lots of recovery resources within Birmingham and within a mile of the hospital that he was being kept in, that they didn't know that they could access. And from that, they started accessing services that they didn't even know existed, that were literally on their doorstep. And yeah, it's always in my mind that I do believe that we've got to do something a little bit different for this lad. And I've got a million examples like that, but again, I ain't got the time. But very sad that it's going, but I'm really glad and proud to have been a part of it. And Christine, I loved working with you, and it's good that we still get to see each other every now and then. You know what I mean? On that note, adios.
Bribes in the post, though.
Cheers, Earl. And like you say, although the programme's finishing, there's so many examples of the programme's learning being taken on board. You know, people like yourself still working within the sector means that although this particular piece of work is coming to a close, there's so many strands of it that have taken on, Colette, obviously speaking earlier, Christine, yourself, there's so many examples of the staff that have come through, have taken those skills on and will remain in the system. So, there's lots of positives, as we're going to see today.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much for that. We've seen the rise of the peer mentor or similar roles across Birmingham over the last few years, and would really like to think that we've all contributed to that in some way with the different programs and the evidence that we've been able to show. So yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm going to just have a look at the chat, because actually I'm going to go to Annie because she's had her hand up for ages. So if I can get Annie's microphone switched on, please. And I'll just look at what other questions are in the chat.
Oh, yeah, hi. First of all, I'm sorry, I put my hand up and I didn't want to be rude. I was listening intently. I've come to this forum to hear from Earl, people like Earl, Colette, Christine. I'm a peer mentor myself in Bristol. Our equivalent of All Fulfilling Lives, Golden Key, I only joined in 2020, and I sort of supported some of the service coordinator team with peer mentoring, and I'm trying to push it because it is just incredible. And I've just got this massive smile on my face because everything you guys have said, I felt, and I've been there, and and the couple of people that I've supported, it's just been incredible. And I'm now part of, it's going to sound very confusing, but it's part of, the government funded sort of Changing Futures. I'm part of that. And frustratingly, they've only, Bristol, they've only financed for some peer mentors for the young people that we're working with. But I'm going to be shouting and pushing for more peer mentors, because I've seen myself the benefits, and so I just quickly wanted to ask, so I understand you obviously it's coming to an end like Golden Key is in Bristol, but I think I did message Jan, and it was like, I think you mentioned about that the peer mentoring thing was very successful, so Birmingham City Council are kind of writing it in, if I got this right, into certain, I'd just love to hear about the positive spread of peer mentoring, really.
Yeah, it's come up across numerous places now where peer mentors are being incorporated in mainstream. Well, I think Kevin Heffernan is somewhere in this call somewhere, who has sort of rolled out nationally across L&D and has been a massive influence on it. I'll have to I'll give you an email, Annie, to give you some examples you can use and bring up there, and hopefully sort of use to push the piece up down your end as well. I'll do that following the meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, thank you, because I have already downloaded your toolkit. I've been bigging you guys up. I think you're incredible. And I just, yeah, thank you. I'm just really proud to be able to listen to you guys and to virtually meet you.
No, it's great. And again, as you say, on the website, we've got the toolkit. We've also got numerous podcasts that discuss where those interviews with organisations that have moved forward with peer mentors. There's films, there's interviews. So again, it's a good sort of a suite of tools that organisations can use to sort of promote the lead worker and especially the peer mentors across organisations. So I'd use the podcasts, use the toolkit, use the case studies. And I'll also, like I said, I'll email you some specific people worth having a chat with in Birmingham that can help you hopefully push things forward as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Annie. Can I just go to another comment from Charlie McNeil? So they said, I don't know if Charlie's a guy or a girl, but they said, Earl, what you said about the value of learning across the fulfilling lives areas, it was speaking with the experts by experience at ESO here in Birmingham that led to the creation of paid positions for peer workers in the Housing First project in Liverpool that went on to be so successful. That was a direct impact of learning and change influenced across the country that those experts made. Thank you for everything you've done with BCFT and beyond. And it's really important to say, actually, we've talked about experts by experience in ESO and they were based at Mind. So we haven't mentioned yet that, I don't think, but important to say that too. So thank you for that comment.